My name is Maurice Hamilton, publisher of Insight to Insight magazine, and we've got a new program that we want to introduce to you called Chat and Chew. Chat and Chew allows us to get with leaders in the community and talk about relevant issues in ways that we can overcome those issues. Tonight I have the opportunity to be joined by two distinguished gentlemen, Kabir Muhammad, which is the Director for Positive Alternatives for Youth, and Dr. Stefan, who is the Director of African American Studies over at St. Louis University. I hope you enjoy this program, because our goal at Insight to Insight magazine is to inform, inspire, and implement. Shout outs to our sponsor, Cabana in the Loop, 6100 Delmar. When you get a chance, get by here. The service is great and the food is wonderful. Thank you.
Figure out what can I do to try and engage and help young people go in a positive direction. And what I've come to find out was a lot of our young people, they don't have a lot of positive alternatives. They have a lot of negative alternatives. So that's why my consulting company was called Positive Alternatives for Youth. I wanted to be in a position to try and help young people develop some pro-social development skills and utilize those skills to help enhance their quality of life and environments that they live in. But to segue into the question that you asked, what's going on with our youth, I think we have to ask the question, what's going on with the adults? Children are just a reflection or duplication of the adult population. Children learn from adults. They learn behaviors, they learn language, they learn activities, their social skills, their positive skills and negative skills, all are learned from adults. So the question I think we also have to ask, not only what is going on with our youth, what is going on with the adult population, so that we would allow for our young people to become so violent. It's just mind-boggling. And I try and look at it from a social standpoint, but also from a psychological standpoint, because we're dealing with a lot of social issues that affect us psychologically. A lot of the programs that I developed, that I utilized when I was doing programs in schools, St. Louis Public School District, Army School District, I work in those schools districts with some of the most challenging of our young people, and the individuals I had on my staff are very skilled in trying to engage and get these young people to move them in a certain direction. But my point is this, our young people today seem to have a total disregard for life, for their community, lack of respect for the adults in their lives. So we really have to look at ourselves as adults and find out what it is that we're not doing to try and help these young people develop some pro-social development skills.
Brother Stefan, what's your take?
Well, I guess if you would ask me this question 5 months ago, I would, if you had asked me what's going on with the youth, I would have said something flippant, like they're scared, underfed, and waiting to be led. But as of August 9th, I think there's a different kind of thing happening with our young people. I think one of the things that I've seen happen is young people aren't afraid. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point, but they're not afraid. They weren't afraid when somebody violated their rights, violated their human rights. They weren't afraid to say something about it. As far as leadership, I'm very inspired by the fact that young people have moved forward to become leaders. Now we need to work on which direction we're leading these, the people behind them and that sort of thing. But in some ways, I'm very encouraged, and in others, I'm concerned. Some of the ways I'm concerned are, these young people at the mercy of these adults, as Brother Muhammad was saying. Unemployment rate for young people is incredibly high. So when we talk about young people roaming the streets, we'll give them a job. That'll change some things around. When we talk about young people not learning as much, we need our best teachers in the schools. But it's a combination of so many different things, so many different systems that young people are making out the best way they can right now. And so I think we're turning a corner where people are starting to realize at the base of all of this is going to be this jobs piece and that education piece. I think, is at the base of all of it.
So what's interesting about that is that you guys tend to have the same goal, but you approach it from two different ends of the spectrum. Stefan, more on the education end, and Kabir, you got more of the human side to it, more of the guerrilla tactic. Explain that. Explain how the two can work together.
What's so grieving for me, and I use the term grieve because anytime you work in an environment and in a community where young people are literally suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because of the type of things that take place within their environment, but yet still get up the next day and go to school.
Amazing. Just amazing.
So I had to really study our young people to get a better understanding of how they're able to cope. Because you have some adults that can't even cope with some of the things that they're faced with. So what I started out doing was going into school environments through another organization that really just catapulted me in this kind of work. They would take me into the schools and they would address the ones that the school had the most problems, most challenging, most violent, the gang members, the drug dealers. They'd have one-on-one environment. And what they would do was strategically use psychology to find out what's going on with them, but it's also trying to lead them in a direction that will be positive for them. So in my studies of young people and trying to understand what they're dealing with, I really can't fault the young people for what has been bequeathed to them. In other words, this world that we live in today is what adults left to our world. And our young people are trying to navigate through it the best that they can with what they have and what they know. It's because it's all about survival of the fittest in the environments that they come from.
Is that the same way on your end too, though, Stefan?
Well, I'll say this, that the way that we have situated education for particularly our young people, it's a training ground, but a training ground for maybe not something so positive. So you think about going into our schools, and I won't name any of our schools, but schools where our young people attend. It is so difficult to get into the school. You go in, you gotta take your keys out your pocket, take your pocket knife out, take your fingernail clipper out, don't bring your ink pen inside. It's so difficult getting in. But there's nobody there when you leave. They don't have, it's not so difficult to leave school. And so the way that we have it set up for education is you have to wear a badge to get into school. You have to know your number to get into school. Of course, you're going through your metal detector. Then in the hallway, somebody's always hollering at you at the bell time and this sort of thing. And then if you step out of line, we make sure to suspend you and this kind of stuff, put you in solitary. I hope you understand where I'm going with this. And as a result, when these young people figure out, look, this may not be much better than than jail or prison, I'm trying to escape, and there's no one there to stop them when they are trying to escape. And so there's that part of the whole thing. I think the other part of it is we have to re-envision ways of engaging these young people. When and I'm not Pollyanna. I don't believe that all the young people are sweet and innocent and that sort of thing. It's some bad kids. Look, some kids that act out. I know that to be sure.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, though, I'm not sure we win anything with our zero tolerance policies. I'm not sure we win anything by suspending young people for 2-3 weeks at a time. And I was just telling Brother Muhammad before we started that if it's a situation where I get suspended for, say, 2 weeks for being disrespectful or something like that, well, if I'm blessed enough to have parents working, they're not staying home with me all day. So where else would I go but to the streets?
Right.
And so we have to re-envision a way to educate these people, to have the kind of educators who take pride in the fact that this is my classroom and you're going to learn, you're going to learn. And so those things I think are what are revealing themselves right now. And then the other thing is education is moving way beyond the classroom. What we have in Ferguson, what we have in the Shaw District, what we have, all over the city is one of the all-time best civics lessons you could ever learn. Mm-hmm. Young people are talking about who's the district attorney.
Right.
Young people know who the police chief is. Young people know who's on the city council and who the mayor is. Man, if you try to teach that in the classroom,
they have.
Yeah. So this is an interesting time to be alive and to be an educator, and I think that we can go somewhere.
So, Brother Kabir, based on what Brother Stefan just said, that's an interesting dynamic. And what I mean by that is you got kids knowing who the district attorney is. You got kids knowing about the history of Ferguson Police Department. How do you change the mindset? How can the two of you work together to change the mindset? Meet them where they are in that type of situation. Because you got a whole different approach. Brother Stefan mentioned that school ain't sexy. It's not sexy to some people, especially from the
It's almost like a burden.
Right.
Some young people.
Right. So how do you, on your end, with your organization, curb that to get them to?
And that's the ultimate goal of what Positive Alternatives is about, is to engage young people where they are, help them get an understanding of how they got to where they are, and help them put together goals and aspirations for the future. But the thing that I always tell young people, it's not just about you. It's about you, your family, and your people.
Now, why put that type of pressure on them?
You see, it's not a thing of putting pressure on them. That's helping them understand what their culture is. I want to be a blood. I want to be a gangster disciple. I want to go around carjacking people. All that is learned behavior. And it is learned behavior from adults.
Yeah.
And we have to really educate young people on the realities of what we deal with in society, so that they cannot get caught up in the traps, which feeds the penal systems and keeps our young people out of the social norms, if I can use that term, social norms, because when we look at society, what's really normal now?
No, I think you're on the right track.
I mean, what's really normal? I was telling Brother Steph the other day, I was coming home from work, they had a detour, came to a stop sign, young brothers in a car, brand new car, hanging out the window, shooting Tech 9 in there. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it shook me. It wasn't that I was afraid, but I was just looking. I said, oh, damn, what was he thinking about? What are they thinking about? That they can ride up and down the street at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and let out 15 shots from a Tech 9 hanging out of the car, driving down the street at about 50 miles an hour. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what is their reality. What would motivate? The guy couldn't have been no more than 16, 17 years old. But how did he get to that point in his life? And then I have to look at the environment and the adults. We want to charge young people for learning behaviors that they learn from us. That's basically what it all boils down to.
Or punish them for what we haven't taught them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But my goal is to help young people understand that the condition, situation, and circumstance that you're facing, you didn't create it, but I can give you some guidance on how to navigate around it, get through it,
Which will ultimately take them to him.
Yes.
So what I hear both of you saying is we got it wrong. We're targeting the wrong people. We're looking at the youth, but the reality of it is that we should be really targeting the adults.
I think it's
Well,
a combination
it's
of both.
you got to do both. That's the way it's going to have to be. So when you're talking about the youth, Brother made a an excellent point in that. In part, what we have is a crisis of pride. So the idea about you do well in school, not for you. You do well in school because you were a Jones or you're a Johnson, and that's that's our legacy. That's what we do. Is we do well.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be some sort of, and I don't want to sound bougie. I don't want to sound as if I'm out of touch, but there has to be some sort of respect for family name. There has to be some sort of respect for what is my family's reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, different families have different reputations.
Absolutely.
But this idea that I'm getting this education for me is the wrong idea. It can't work like that. So that's probably the most selfish thing on earth you can do. Of course, a man that gets gold and doesn't share it is a low-down, dirty man, of course. But a man who gets knowledge and doesn't share it is the worst kind of sinner. And so the idea is we need to start with this pride element. This pride element that you may come from dangerous neighborhoods, you may come from poor circumstances, but we are descendants of Africans. We came across an ocean. We came from the worst circumstances, and we made it.
Right.
We made it, and there's no stopping us in that way. The other thing I'd say is and who knows, this may not be popular, but we have to start also thinking about. We spend a lot of time on the bad actors, the ones who have the worst kind of behavior. We really need to invest in those young people who are in the middle, who can go up or down as far as their behavior. We need to focus on those talented young people too, and cultivate them so that they go from good to great. I have a program that we work with at St. Louis University called the African American Male Scholars Initiative, and that's our unofficial motto: good to great. If you're good enough to get in the SLU, we'll make you great enough to be leaders in the world. And so on April 9th, we'll have a conference where we'll invite 2 university presidents. We'll have one of the finest scholars of Black male achievement and some of these young people from the program speaking. But the idea is, yes, we need to focus on the young people who are going into the area that Brother Muhammad has to deal with them and help them and guide them. But we also need to help these young people to learn that you're going to become a governor. You're going to become
Or even
a
that
businessman.
you can, right? You can
Yeah,
become.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So, Brother Kabir, is it, as it relates to getting people to see that, getting the kids, talking to the youth about education or even pride? I mean, you have to run into the pride element a whole lot dealing with a youth. The example that you gave, gentlemen, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, spraying a weapon. What's the thought process? So when you're trying to talk to a youth to get him to a Stefan Bradley, get him into that world, because the reality of it is a whole nother world that he's not even used to, that he doesn't even think that he can even attain.
The reason I'm smiling is because I'm listening to you. And it's not about pride with young people. It's all about respect. And when you look at our young people,
That's good.
they realize that we have been disrespected since we've been in this country. So what you see in Ferguson, we're not taking it no more. We're not being disrespected.
So
We ain't
they
being
fed up.
killed. We ain't been shot at and killed for nothing. We're not doing that.
Okay.
You're going to respect me as a human being. So one of our strategic tools is to help young people understand what respect is really about.
And that was going to be my next question. Do they really understand what respect is all about? Even when you merge it with something like we came over on a boat. When you marry that to that type of history that we have, my thing is how can we get them understanding, like you said, Stefan, how do you get them understanding who we are? This is who we are. If we came over on a boat, how much worse can it get? If they don't understand that, brother, then how can they understand what respect is? And I hear you.
To answer your question, then it goes right back to us. Who will teach it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's true.
Good point.
And the reason we're at this point now was nobody's taught.
Yeah.
Nobody's really talked about the racism and white supremacy that we face on a daily basis here in America. Black people, particularly black males, who are systematically are targeted.
Yeah.
And then we end up with situations where we're trying to understand why these young people are acting the way they're acting.
Right.
These young people are not as crazy as we think they are.
Exactly.
They understand what's going on in this world. And what they're upset about is, how come the adults haven't done anything to try and change all of this? I mean, my initial statement at the onset of this conversation was, look what we bequeath to these young people. You know, when I looked at Walmart, that's going to be passed down from one generation to the next.